Today I'm going to teach you how to simply alter the waist and the seat of men's trousers. Notice first that there is a seam, one seam that runs from the top of the waistband all the way down to the crotch of the pants. And that's the seam that we're going to be altering today. The first step in alterations is to carefully consider how the garment is put together originally. So on this one, you'll see that there's this interfacing piece here, and it's stitched to the waistband. And then there's our central seam that goes all the way down, which when it's sewed, it looks like this. Cut. The next step in alterations is to carefully begin to stitch rip. Cut. So if I was going to alter this pair of trousers, the first thing I would do is carefully begin to stitch rip this white and tan facing from the brown trouser fabric. This pair doesn't need alteration, so I'm not going to rip them, but that would be the first step, to rip all of that interfacing away from the brown fabric. Just carefully pull it apart like that, and you can see the threads, and that's what you want to put your seam ripper in, that thread. You don't want to tear the brown fabric or the white interfacing fabric, but you just want to get the thread and stitch rip. Here's a pair of pants that I've already ripped. You see, I've separated the white facing fabric from the tan slack fabric, and I'm going to start ripping down to the crotch. And again, I'm just catching the thread with my stitch ripper. I am not getting my stitch ripper caught in the fabric of the trousers, because that'll put a hole in your fabric. So as you can see, I've now ripped the trousers apart all the way down the back, almost to the crotch. You don't want to get into this crotch seam because that messes with the actual construction of the trouser. So never go any lower than here. I'm stopping here today for the sake of this lesson. Now I want to carefully put the two pieces together and pin them. Be very careful to match up the seams that connect the waistband to the pant leg. You want that seam to match perfectly. So take time to make sure that it's matching before you pin it. Okay. The next step is to take some kind of a pencil or a fabric marker, something that does not permanently mark the trousers. And you want to duplicate your stitch line in your new area. In this case, we are letting these pants out, so we're going to go as close to this finished edge as we can get. If you were taking the pants in, you would go this direction. Just depends on what you want to do to the pants. Most of the steps are the same. So I'm going to start stitching where it was originally stitched. And then I'm just going to start gradually moving away from that original stitch line, getting bigger and bigger as I work my way up the back of the trousers. See the original stitch line, my new stitch line. Now this isn't something that I do every time I alter a pair of pants, but when you've altered 5,000, you don't have to do this anymore. I'm just creating my new stitching line. So you can see that I've given over an inch of room in this trouser when I'm finished. I've made them over an inch bigger because this is over a ½ inch. So I'm going to keep working my way up with my new stitching line. Just following the original stitching line. And I'm going to go up through all of those layers of the waistband, still following the original stitching line. And then we're going to baste it. So I have my needle threaded single thread with black thread to do the basting. And I'm going to start back in the original seam line, and then I'm just going to baste on my new line that I marked with the pencil. Okay. So I'm just going to baste my way all the way up that marking line that we made. Basting is just a simple straight stitch that will hold the pants together so that we're sure to sew them correctly when we're sewing with the sewing machine. There is a way to do this without a sewing machine, which we can also discuss later, and that would be using a back stitch. So now you can see I've basted on my pencil drawn line all the way up the trousers. And we'll turn them over and you can see how much room we've added to the seat of these trousers. We've given almost 2 inches up here at the waistband. Okay, so the next step is to go to the sewing machine. So now we're ready to take the trousers to our sewing machine. I always start stitching with the sewing machine back in the original stitched line, back beyond where we started stitch ripping. And we're going to sew on our basting line, and that's why you use a different color basting thread so that it's very easy to see. And we're going to sew right along that line. So I'm going to take a few stitches in that original stitch line, and then I'm going to reverse, and then I'm going to go forward, just reinforcing our new seam. And then I'm just going to carefully stitch along the basting line. Get to the end, the very top, and I'm going to back stitch again and forward. It just reinforces your seam. So now I'm removing the black basting thread. You don't want black threads sticking out on your husband's behind. You just pull that out. It's much easier than stitch ripping the original stitch line because you took big stitches. So here we are. We have a completely new seam in these trousers, and look at the room we've added in the waist and on down through the seat. Here's how it looks on the back. The final step in the sewing is to open up both sides of this facing and fold it back like it was. And this is why I told you the first step was paying attention to how they were put together to begin with, because we want to put it back like it was. So I folded that down, opened up the seam like it was, and now I'm going to take the sewing machine and I'm going to do what they call stitching in the ditch. I'm going to stitch in this seam line to reinforce and hold this together. So my seams are all open, and I'm stitching in the ditch. And for good measure, I'll go this direction. Again, in the ditch. You want to stitch right in the seam that connects the waistband to the trouser body. My thread doesn't exactly match here, but you still can't see where I've sewn because I went in the ditch. Trim all these threads. The final step in our trouser alteration is to press. And you just want to open up your seam at the new seam line the way it was at the old seam line. Here I'm not going to press right on the fabric because I don't want it to get shiny, so I'm going to get out my press cloth. Lay it over. Really give it good steam. Oh, this isn't the final step. We have to put the belt loop back on. Forgive me. So we've pressed that out nicely. Press that waistband just a tiny bit more on the back. Let the steam do the work. And we're going to reattach the belt loop now. Okay. Now this is the final step, I promise. We're reattaching the belt loop that we removed. Belt loops are usually right over your back center seam. And so this is where it really, again, makes a difference if you paid attention to how it was put together to begin with. So I'm going to stitch across, and then I'm going to back stitch across again. 2 times should be good. And cut my threads. And then the top of it back like it was. I wish my thread matched better, but okay, I'm just going to go right in the same seam that I ripped apart, and I'm going to back stitch. And this time we are done. This takes me less than an hour, and it costs anywhere from $11 to $20 to have it done. So, there we are. We've added almost 2 inches to the waist and a good inch to the seat of these trousers. The first step in hemming a pair of trousers is to determine how long the trousers need to be. Men's trousers are sold by waist size and then inseam. The waist, of course, is the measurement around the waist, and the inseam designates the length of the seam from crotch down the leg to the hem. For this sample today, I need a 30-inch inseam. As you can see, these are sold unhemmed. Better trousers are sold unhemmed. Cheaper trousers are sold hemmed. Yay you if you can find a hemmed pair. But suit pants are sold unhemmed. And so I need a 30-inch inseam. To do that, I'll fold back the top leg, and using my tape, we'll measure from the crotch seam down the leg to the 30-inch mark. When I determine the 30-inch mark, I pinch the fabric in my hands and fold it inside itself. When I've determined 30 inches, I fold the fabric inside itself at the 30-inch line. Now you can see there I'm at 30 and a half, so I need to come in a ½ inch more. Measure again, and I'm at 29 7/8, so I'm going to pull it out just a little bit, 30. Okay, then I bring the other leg down and do the exact same thing. This time, however, I have the bottom leg to use, so I don't even use the measuring tape because we want both legs to be the same length, unless your husband has one leg longer than the other. Always take care to keep the waistband together at the top so that you don't have one leg longer than the other. So I'm pulling down and I've got 30-inch inseams, even at the waist. It's very smooth. And so I'm going to get my press cloth and press that 30-inch hem in. It's important to use a press cloth because irons leave shiny marks on fabric, especially darker fabrics and thinner polyester type fabrics that aren't woven as tightly as a good quality wool. But it's just really important to practice using a press cloth for good clothes. They'll look better for a longer time. You'll get better, more professional ironing results, and we can talk about that later. So I've matched up my second leg, or my top leg of the trouser, to the bottom one, and again I'm laying the press cloth on and pressing. You want a good firm crease because that is your finished hem length. Okay, so I have good sharp creases in there, designating my finished length. So now I'm going to pull out the excess fabric that we folded in. And my goodness, you'd never want a hem that big. The hem on men's trousers is never more than 2 inches. A correct hem. Sometimes they are more, but 2 inches. And so what I'm going to do, because these are very good quality pants and I know this is very straight, is I'm going to measure from the straight edge up to my finished, and it is 7 and about a half. So I know I need to cut off 5 and a half inches, winding up with my 2-inch hem. Measuring from the factory edge, I'm going to go to 5 and a half inches. Because I want to resolve with a 2-inch hem. So just make marks across the pant leg, measuring up from your factory edge. And now I'll show you another little trick, which in sewing class they would not tell you to do this, but it works wonderfully, so I'm going to show you. I'm going to cut, keep your factory edges together, and then you can kind of cheat. You can fold it on itself using that as your edge to keep you cutting straight. Okay. So now we've cut off our excess on one leg. Take care to fold that